Welcome to Money 911, where health, wealth, and peace of mind come together. I'm Kris Miller, and I'm your host. And today's episode isn't just about money, it's about freedom. Behind every dollar is a story of control or empowerment, illusion or clarity. My guest, David Morgan, has spent over 4 decades guiding people through the storm of monetary manipulation. He's the author, strategist, and truth teller who dares to challenge the mainstream narrative and remind us that freedom isn't given, it's guarded. Today, we'll explore how to protect your wealth, reclaim your power, and step into a future where your money serves your values, not the system. All right, David, it's a privilege and honor to have you here today.
Well, thank you, Kris.
Let's just get right into it. And the conversation around money, and I really think we're in a wake-up call. And you've said most people don't realize that the monetary system is quietly rewriting their future. What's one truth every person you wish would wake up today with?
Well, 3 words, all fiat fails. I mean, any time that we've been in a debt-based monetary system or a paper printing contest, like you take Zimbabwe, they didn't have a bond market. So they really weren't debt-based. They were just printing money. And that whole system went from where Zim dollar equaled a US dollar at one point. And then within about 6 months, it took one Zim dollar, or excuse me, it took like 25,000 Zims to equal one US dollar. And a period of a year and a half, the last printing of the Zimbabwe currency was a $100 trillion note. And they never circulated because by the time the German printer had printed up the 100 trillion blue papered note, the system had failed. And what were they using? They were using gold, silver, jewelry, barter, and greenbacks from the United States to keep the economy alive.
It's crazy. And I always encourage people to take time out to learn about safe money. I'm totally in safe money, right? If money was energy, how does the way that we use this determine whether we're creating bondage or building freedom for ourselves and the generations that are coming?
Chris, I will answer that directly, but I think, I looked into what you do and what you've done for, I think, 30 years or more, maybe 40. I've been in this 40 years or so. Your show is about financial emergencies, and that resonates with me. But the truth is, most people's emergencies come from trusting a financial system built on debt and paper promises. Gold and silver aren't a gamble, they're a guarantee. They're part of a financial first aid kit that doesn't expire, doesn't rust, and doesn't depend on Wall Street staying sane. If you want true financial health, you need sound money at the foundation. And I think that's as succinctly as I can say it, because those two are money. When most people, some of the interviews I do, most are in the honest money or hard or sound money camp, but not all. And there are some very wealthy people that have done really well in the system, and you can. But as I said, if I'm correct and all fiat fails, and right now the track record is 100%, then at some point that wealth may evaporate, may change hands or what have you. So I think that's the important thing, is to understand that when you live a lie, sooner or later that lie will catch up with us. What's the lie? You can get something for nothing. A group of elite bankers at a cartel level that are internationalists and don't care about what country they're from, have no allegiance to anyone or anything except themselves and their greed, can print things up and force us to give us our labor to them for basically nothing. It's gotta fail. And they know that.
Right.
And all they want is more and more control all the time. So unfortunately, I know it may sound harsh, and maybe some of your listeners said, well, this guy sounds like an extreme doomer. The fact is, I'm an extreme truther because that truth has been proven again and again throughout history. This is nothing new. And if I might give a shameless plug, let me go a little further. If you go to my website, themorganreport.com, and go to the About tab, and you pull down the About tab, there's a free film in there called The Four Horsemen Film, not to be confused with The Four Horsemen. And The Four Horsemen film is probably, I'm guessing, at least a decade old, but it goes through the collapse of empire. And it shows how empires come and go. Even the Roman Empire, as great as it once was, failed. And we, the American empire, are on the same track. So I'll give it back to you, Kris. I just got me on a roll because I love educating people and speaking truth to power when most people know something's wrong, like in the Matrix movie. You know something's wrong, but you can't you don't know what it is, but you
Right.
felt it. You felt it your entire working life. I'm working harder, but I'm getting less out of it. So anyway, back to you.
Right. Exactly, exactly. And that's why I've called it Money 911. I was just, decades ago was given this foresight by, you know, the spirit, you could say. I'm just seeing lots of messages and about this time that we're in, and you can't just keep printing money with no backing, and then the debt that they just crazily just keep raising the debts, and we're right at two. It seems like all these civilizations are about 250, and it's at that critical level that I think we got a couple year. This is just what I feel, sort of like a little stall space, a couple years of maybe grace. But I think the whole thing's going to shift. They had that money, digital currency already, right? Fed now in the banks. They were ready to go. I think it's beyond politics, but sometimes politics can kind of stall it out a little bit. But the powers that be want that for control and all of that. And so that's why people got to pay attention, because what they're invested in doesn't have any, it's here today and gone tomorrow, let alone people in the stock market with a roulette wheel. So we're living in an age of uncertainty, shocks, financial, political, cultural. How do people, get out of this uncertainty into a reliance instead of fear?
Yeah, well, you put a lot on me there.
I know that's a lot.
But
It's a
no,
biggie.
but I can speak from my own personal experience. I mean, no one can take that away from me. But I think first of all, you've got to really be educated what money really is, what it represents, and the true value of money is that it's a store of value. So if it really stored value, then that meant when I started in the working world, I started working at 16, but not full time. But my first career job, I was in my early 20s. So if money held its value, then I would know that that dollar that I earned at age 20 would purchase the same amount of goods and services at age 70. But it doesn't. It doesn't. And so the word money really doesn't represent currency. They're different things. So the currency that's printed and we're told that it's money doesn't do its function, the main function being a store of value. Going beyond that, how do you overcome the fear? Well, knowledge is power. So if you understand how the system works, you can do things to mitigate that problem. For an example, just in the last 25 years, if you had saved all of your savings in gold instead of in the bank, the gold price 25 years ago was $250 an ounce.
Right.
If you multiply that by 10, it's $2,500 an ounce. But gold recently hit $3,500 an
Yeah.
ounce. So there are very few investments that have kept up with that, including the bond market and the stock market in that time frame.
Right.
Now, all markets go up and down, and gold is no exception. However, the long-term trend is what I said earlier, that you're holding on to value as you progress out in time. And that's something that isn't taught in school. They never talk about gold, silver, sound money, or honest finance. What they talk about is the present value of money and a bunch of equations. I have a degree in finance and I know how it all works. And I'll be honest, I actually still use the present value of money when I look at or currency, when I look at doing an analysis on a mining company. But that's really because they're playing the game of debt. So they're borrowing money from the bank to build the mine. How long will it take the mine to pay back their fiat, et cetera, et cetera. But I'm a little digressing here, Kris. I'll bring it back to you. But it's sad. I want to add one more thing. You said it was so powerful. And that was that the bankers really don't care what your ideology is. And this is something that the bankers or the elites or whomever get us, blue or red, you know, left or right. And then there's the bigger ideologies. Are you communist, fascist? Are you socialist? Are you democratic republic? Are you a social democrat? I mean, there are all these ideologies, and yet the banks don't care. They print the money for the U.S., Russia, the European Union, South America, and as Rothschild was purportedly to say, I care not who runs the government. Give me the power to print the money, and I care not.
Right.
And I didn't quote it exactly, but that's the point. That I don't care who runs the government. If I control the money, it doesn't care who runs the government.
Right.
And this is something that isn't taught. I mean, that should be the first lecture in civics, because the economy and politics are tied together. And unfortunately, the more corrupt the money becomes, the more corrupt the society becomes, which means the political class becomes more corrupt. And now, almost to a man and woman, every Congress critter out there is bought and paid for. And they really should have to wear uniforms telling who their sponsors are.
Exactly.
I'm with Exxon. I'm
Right.
with AT&T.
Yep.
I'm with 3M. Monsanto
Yep.
owns me. And
Right.
that way we get a clearer picture who's really running the country.
Exactly.
Because it's not the voting class, it is the corporate class. And the corporate class is above the political class. But if you tell that to most people that are, let's say, I wouldn't say undereducated, but really not attuned to how the system truly works,
Right.
they believe all the almost acting that you see constantly on the mainstream press because that keeps them occupied. And they think if their guy or gal gets in, things will change. No, things change when we have an honest system. If we have a dishonest system, things will not change.
Right. Right. But I agree with you. And I've seen what is it, like gold is beating the S&P, and like you're saying, if you would have bought it then and all of that. Why is it you're leaning, I think I know, but I want you to say, why is it that you're leaning on silver more than gold?
Well, first of all, because the adage that he who owns the gold makes the rules, I think there's some truth in that. And the bankers still own a great deal of gold. Yet silver was taken out of the monetary system in what's called the crime of 1873, when silver was really demonetized by the bankers. And that's what the Wizard of Oz was all about. Frank Baum's book, The Wizard of Oz, taking the yellow brick road, was all about the Eastern establishment in the Emerald City taking over the greenbacks and paving the road with gold, and they wanted a gold only standard. So they again could control our labor from the miners, the carpenters, the hard workers out in the West, primarily, these two, and they could control the monetary system. So if you made the new rule that only gold rules, and you silver folks out there all of a sudden took a big haircut in the value of your money, you are beholden to the bankers once more. So I'm for the underdog. I always have been. I probably always will be. I mean, you show me one of those heartfelt stories where, Secretariat wins,
Right.
the Triple Crown, and that horse was small, but
Yeah.
had the biggest heart of all of them. And so that's one of the reasons. The other is that the bankers don't have much control over silver. The bullion banks have a great deal of control, but it's only through the paper markets. And we, the people, really, if I could convince enough people that silver would give us the power and forget about gold, for example, then I think we really could have some effect on how things go because silver is required for a high-tech society.
Exactly.
Gold isn't.
Right.
If we lost all the gold tomorrow, the world would really carry on. People that own gold or relied on gold would probably have a problem. People love their gold watch and didn't see it anymore, probably cried, but the world would go on. But if you took silver out of the system, we wouldn't be able to talk over the internet. We wouldn't have a telephone. We wouldn't have electricity. We wouldn't have clean water. We wouldn't have some of the medical disinfectants that we have. We would really come back to like the early 1800s if we didn't have silver.
And silver is limited, right? Isn't there a limited supply compared to gold?
It is. In fact, there's arguments going on that the two biggest silver studies that are done in the United States, but the Silver Institute and Metals Focus, who works with them, have shown a silver deficit of about 200 million ounces over the last 4 years or so.
Mm.
And so that means we have plenty of silver. Oh, maybe I should say plenty. There's enough silver currently
Mhm.
to meet the demand because the above ground stockpile is there to be used for that deficit. But if that continues, and I believe it's going to accelerate, then the days are limited. Are they 2 days, 3 days? No, it's nothing that imminent, but could be a couple of years, as you said. And I have said probably for the last, now I'll be honest, probably 5 or 6 years. We have about 2 years left. Well, 3 years have gone by, but things have changed even more drastically. And I honestly do, to the best of my ability, my human ability, think we do only have a few more left. And we get a better grasp on that number or that idea because of what's happened in the central bank digital currency realm. The fact that even big, well-known brokerage houses and financial institutions are starting to admit that this debt cannot be paid off, and probably the only way to go is to print our way out of it. And
Yeah,
anyone that knows anything about money knows that that is the end game, that you
right,
can't do that very long.
right. Exactly. But the politicians aren't going to do anything. They'll just sit there. Right. And
Right.
I don't you think that the silver is the price of it is being held down? Is that true?
Yeah, it's true. I mean, there was at one time for many years the Silver Users Association. There is no other commodity that has a users association. There isn't a wheat users association or an oil users association, but there was a silver users association.
Hmm.
And their primary function was to make sure, since they use it for industrial purposes, like Kodak, we don't use silver in film anymore, but at one time we did. Kodak was a big member of the Silver Users Association. That has been disbanded, at least officially. Whether unofficially it exists or not, I do not know. But what I do know is, yeah, their mandate was basically to keep things lined up so that they had a better profit margin.
Right.
But yet, now that we are breaking free from that, all we really have to do is vote with our pocketbooks. But it's hard for people because, I'm a proponent of eating healthy, and I don't all the time. I'll look the camera in the eye and say, but I do most of the time.
Right.
But there's people now that basically have a very high carbohydrate diet only because they can't afford a better diet because they're struggling making ends meet. And that's sad. In a country that at one time had the ideals that we were founded upon, and to see things slip this far culturally, society wise, and giving out money to, let's say, foreign countries, I'm for helping a hand up, but not a hand out. Anyway, the
Exactly.
point is, I'm off track, is we really should, charity starts at home. I mean, when you look at what's happening with the homeless, what's happening to the veterans, what's going on with the average American worker, and then we're spending money outside of the US for what? We need to start, really reflecting on what the heck was going on here.
Right.
And we got maybe a glimpse of with Doge, or however it's pronounced.
Yeah.
And that was a start. And I'm not a big Elon fan, trust me on that statement. But the
Right.
point is, we really need to tighten the belt and to tell the truth. And the only way you're going to ever solve a problem is by first acknowledging the problem. And there isn't a politician out there that's going to acknowledge the problem. They
No.
might talk about the debt being big, but
Right.
they're not going to acknowledge the problem that it mathematically will never be paid off. And we've got to correct the problem. And here's how we're going to do it. No
And
one's
here,
going to.
and here comes the omnibus in the fall, the big bill with all the monster stuff. It's nuts. It's crazy. And most people are only going to react after a financial shock, really. It
Mm-hmm.
seems like it has to be a shock, or whether it's inflation or market crash or policy changes. And the leaders, they're not, like you said, they've got the who bought them signs on, or they should have the signs on them. So it's up to each, really, at this point, for everybody to be their own bank, right? Or start to
Much as you can. Yeah. I mean, you
do the
can be
thing.
your own bank if store in gold and silver. I mean, that's really outside of the system. It's one of the few things that can be outside the system that has a money value to it. I
Right.
mean, a good pile of, two by fours would be an asset and it would be something outside the system, but they could warp. You need storage yard, and all that type of thing. So really, money does serve a very important purpose. And it's just the fact that we've really gotten away from a money standard to a currency debt-based Ponzi scheme. And again,
Exactly. Right.
as it gets more and more um, taken to the limit, the more we're going to reach that point of no return. And you said something very important, Kris. I want to reemphasize, and that is maybe 250 years. There are currency changes about every 40 years, like the change the color of the paper or the size of the president's picture or something like that. But those are really minor changes. Kind of the kind of financial storm that I see coming is one that's every 200 to 400 years. These are so substantial, they go down into the history books, and usually they're remembered by at least two generations. One of the biggest problems about the human nature is we got a great forgetter.
Yeah.
And after two or three generations, we kind of forget that, paper money leads to bad things. We just accept it. Well, it's okay. And we're forced to accept it too with the legal tender laws. It's not like you really have a choice. I've always thought of calling up the property tax assessor here and getting him on the phone and saying, you know what? I frauded you for the last 10 years. What are you talking about? Well, I paid my property taxes with a Federal Reserve note. It's a notation from a private corporation. Article 1, Section 8 says they're supposed to pay all debts in the state by gold or silver, and I haven't been doing that. Am I in trouble?
Right. That's reality, really. It
Yeah.
it just hasn't caught up in people's consciousness. I guess bricks, right?
Oh, yeah.
What do
Bricks
you
is
think? Right?
looking after themselves. I have no axe to grind with them.
They
It's a
see the gold is
de-dollarization
the deal,
program.
right?
They're
Right.
associating closely with gold. I think there's a little misinformation about it, but not much. But and I don't have it perfect, but I have looked at it pretty carefully. And yeah, they're basically saying we're trading each other's currency, so you don't have to use the dollar.
Right. Because they see it coming. What precious metals are often as seen as assets, but you frame them as tools for liberty, like own. And then how can owning real estate restore a sense of sovereignty in everybody's life?
Well, if you go back to some of the founding principles and you read some of what Jefferson wrote, you'll find that really to be totally self-sufficient, you have to have kind of an agrarian culture. And in those days, many did. So you had your own land, you grow your own
Right.
vegetables, and you had animal husbandry. And that still exists. Primarily, most people know about the Amish, but even the Amish are tied to the currency system to a low degree, but somewhat. But the idea to be totally self sufficient really is tough these days, almost impossible.
Yeah.
Nonetheless, you can mitigate the situation if you do own property, especially if you can have a garden or even raise animals, which again is tough, but could be done. But let's just take it away from that and just put in the context of having a fully paid for home. That gives you a lot of security, although you never really own it because every state I know of has a property tax.
Right.
And so even though you own it, you still pay rent to the state for the privilege of owning your home. And then you have, honest money, gold or silver. You could use other assets, as I talked about. And so that gives you a buffer. Does it
Right.
really exempt you or abate the problem? No, it doesn't. But at least you've got, as I would say, a buffer, a way that a lot of people don't. The main thing, if you're just starting out, is to live within your means. And that's very difficult. I
Right.
get that. I'm not trying to be harsh here
Yeah.
because the depreciation of the currency has been so great, especially the last few years, that wage that looked pretty good in the year 2019, 6 years later, you just
Yeah.
can't make it work. Rent's
Right.
up, food's up, fuel's up, insurance is up, school costs are up, clothing costs more. There isn't much you can name that isn't higher in price,
Right.
much more than what your wages might have increased over that same time frame.
Yep. Exactly. Exactly. Well, your new documentary, Silver Sunrise, is about liberty, right? Being eroded through money, like what we've been talking about. So, how do you connect monetary control with personal freedom, and why should CEOs and entrepreneurs and people like really care?
Well, I would say there are some CEOs that care, but most of the 1% don't care. They have more money than they could ever use or spend. What
Right.
they care about is maintaining control, and they're looking for a basically a two-party system, the elite and everybody else. So they're looking to mitigate, how many mouths are being fed, to go into a transhumanist type of situation where people are enhanced by technology. And we're really going into a technocratic era
Oh,
where technology basically rules the day, and people are really mitigated off to the side and not used very often. For example, you will have AI, artificial intelligence, do a lot of what's called, I will call clerical work now, like going to the DMV and talking to a person and getting
mm,
in line, talking to another person, and then maybe taking a drive test with another person.
right.
You just walk in, you'll see a robot, it'll greet you, it'll do an eye scan, it'll know exactly who you are from a biometric identification system,
Yeah.
and it'll look at your insurance and traffic record, and it'll probably spit a new license out in about 3 minutes and go on your way. I mean, that's just an example, and it may not go
No,
exactly the way I
no,
stated it.
yeah,
But you
yeah,
see that, and you can't argue with them. There's no gray area with a robot or an AI.
right,
And there is with humans, I mean, if you're elderly or you're using a walker or,
right.
you've got Parkinson's or whatever the case may be, there is enough humanity left in most of us that you can, drop into that gray area and maybe put somebody up to the front of the line because they can't stand there for 2 hours or whatever it is. So
Jeez.
again, I digress,
Yeah.
but the
No, I mean,
idea,
there's a lot of rabbit holes in that AI, in that, there's a lot, and it's coming fast, and that's a whole different podcast. But um, the silver question, the precious metals have been called the people's money. And so what role do you see gold and silver, right, playing in not just preserving wealth, but restoring balance in a manipulated system?
it's a tough one. I'm a member of the Sound Money Committee, and we are working hard. Its website is Citizens for Sound Money, and all the principles that work for everyone. I mean, basically a level playing field for everyone, where the money is an objective reality, not something that an elite class gets to have control of. But that's an ideology, and that's a very idealistic presentation that probably won't reassert itself. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't fight for it. But there is a direct correlation between free money and a free people. And when the money is controlled, then the money controls the people. So
Right.
if you believe what I believe, that money is power, then the money powers control Congress, as I mentioned earlier, or presidents, or nation states, or corporations. And because of that money power, they're able to put in um, whatever they want, whenever they want. I mean, if you look at fracking, for example, basically they made null and void the Clean Water Act. That was very important for humans on in this nation state to have clean water. What a concept. But
Right.
now that we're getting low on conventional oil, we'll go frack for it. And if we frack with these chemicals and we start cracking these rocks and sucking the oil and gas out of it, which I'm not totally against, just totally against the fact that that means that you can pollute the water system and not get in trouble for it. That's not right.
Yeah, yeah, there's a lot there. Well, many of our listeners are visionaries, and they're building something that will outlast them. And so, what is your advice for creating legacy of both wealth and freedom for future generations?
Well, I think we need to do a competing currency. So it could be gold, it could be silver, it could be a cryptocurrency, it could be a community currency of some type, it could be a barter club. I think the people need to choose what's the best money for them outside of the banking system. Again, super idealistic. Do I really think it'll happen? Not at a large scale. I
Right.
think it could, and it probably will happen as the reset presses forward. I
Right.
mean, there could be a time in the not distant future where we're required to take some type of biometric ID in order to keep in their banking system. And there may be some people that just don't want to do that, and they'll have to figure out a way to survive outside of that that realm.
Yeah.
And there will be people that do that. So I'm not trying to be a doomer. I have studied this topic basically my whole life, and I see what's coming. Will it come down exactly as I said? No, it'll probably be somewhat different.
They've already announced it. I mean, the
Yeah.
European, whatever that lady's name is, announced it.
Christine Lagarde.
Yeah, we have the passport now. It's always like give everybody a bunch of fear, and then you can have this digital passport inside of you and just put your hand up or whatever. Here we are, 666, but they've already announced that. And they got a little pushback with this administration for a couple seconds, but they're waiting it out, I think, honestly. So,
Well, I had my 2 cents to that. I mean, Trump said there will be no CBDC. That really made a lot of people happy, me included, except that when I thought about it about 3 seconds later, that means there won't be a central bank digital currency, which actually be pretty hard to do because Congress would have to pass it.
and they
There'd
don't
probably be a lot of people that would
Yeah.
protest, but they'll just have a JP Morgan do a private digital currency. Well, it's just your bank that's doing it.
right.
So they'll skirt around it by saying, oh, it's not
Right.
a central bank. Excuse me, it's not the government. It's not a central bank digital currency. It's a private bank digital currency. So
Yeah.
I think it's inevitable that they're going to push.
It is inevitable, and the whole being that the whole planet is in debt. It isn't just the United States, but everybody followed our great example of being in debt. Send your kid to college and give them a credit card. Start them out young, so it's intentionally demolished everybody. So let everybody know how they can, get your movie, get in contact with you. Do you suggest that's where people should start? Get Silver? What do you think?
Yeah, well, the main thing is become educated, become monetary literate, which is what you've been doing on your show for years. So I shout out to you and commend you for that.
Thank
You
you.
can go to my website and get our free newsletter. We have a free one, and that's at themorganreport.com. And if you're interested in my private work, there is a premium service you can explore on the subscribe button. And if you're interested in the documentary, it is at silversunrise.tv. And there's a few trailers there. You can watch the trailers and see if it piques your interest or not.
All right. Well, I hope everybody watches it and learns about what you're talking about, because is Money 911, right?
It is.
Yeah. Well, thank you, David, for joining us today. Do appreciate the conversation.
Thank you.
David Morgan has shown us that protecting wealth is not just about balance sheets. It's about protecting freedom, clarity, and legacy. The storms of manipulation may rise, but when you align your money with truth, you stand on unshakable ground. Please share this episode with someone who needs to see beyond the illusion. And remember, you are not powerless. You can live free, create wisely, and step into a future of wealth and peace. I'm Kris Miller, and this is Money 911, your roadmap to clarity in an uncertain world. I've created the Safe Money Blueprint. This is the same strategy that thousands of my clients have used to feel secure about their financial future. And you can get it free at healthymoneyhappylife.com/blueprint. There's so much to learn about healthy money. I hope today's discussion brings you one step closer to securing and protecting your future. So you can get started on the right foot, go to meetwithkrismiller.com and schedule your free financial fitness strategy session. Thank you for listening, and please subscribe to Money 911 so you don't miss our next episode, which includes health, wealth, and peace of mind.
Lives inside of